choose to stand with Donald Trump and every American who believes we can make this country great again. You know, it really is pretty amazing. At the very moment that America's crying out for something new and different, the other party has come forward with a candidate who literally embodies the failed status quo in Washington, D.C. When people in both parties are restless for change, ready to break free from the old patterns in Washington, D.C., the other party has nominated someone who literally personifies the status quo. So North Carolina, let me just ask you a favor. Will you pledge tonight to not rest and not relent for the next 6 days and 3 weeks until we ensure that Hillary Clinton is never elected President of the United States of America? Because this election is about big things. It's about big things, and I came here tonight to talk to you about it because I want you to talk to your neighbors and friends in the next 3 weeks and 6 days as the American people and the people of North Carolina make this decision. There's one other thing before I get into our campaign. I want to ask you one more favor. I know he's in Lumberton tonight. Our hearts are with the people of North Carolina and the families of the 20 who've lost their lives in the Capitol. But would you please join me in sending Pat McCrory back to the governor's office and having strong conservative leadership for a prosperous North Carolina? But this election on our front, I think it's about security. I think it's about prosperity. I think it's about the highest court in the land, and it's about the high expectations of the American people in public life. And I want to talk about those things tonight. First and foremost, despite traveling millions of miles as our Secretary of State, the truth is that the world is more dangerous today than the day that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama took over American foreign policy. It's true. Our allies are less secure. Our enemies are more emboldened. And our military has been struggling under the weight of repeated defense cuts. Let me give you some of these statistics. Today, the United States Army has the lowest troop level since 1940. The Navy has the smallest number of ships since 1940. To ensure that our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marine have the resources and tools they need to accomplish their mission to protect our families and to hunt down and destroy ISIS and any terrorist organization that threatens our people. On the foreign stage has weakened America's place in the world, not just through hollowing out the military. It's also been through decisions. It's amazing to think of an American foreign policy that boasts of leading from behind, moving red lines, feigning resets with Russia. The rise, rule, and reign of ISIS are all a testament of that truth of history that weakness arouses evil. It's extraordinary to think of her record in particular, because truth is that Hillary Clinton is the architect of the failed foreign policy of Barack Obama. It was Hillary Clinton who helped undo the gains that the American soldier won in Operation Iraqi Freedom. Remember, the Secretary of State was obligated to negotiate an agreement with the sovereign government of Iraq that would allow additional U.S. forces to remain to preserve the hard-fought gains. Now, I will tell you that I was in the Congress for the 12 years, and I visited soldiers downrange each and every year after the initiation of hostilities. I remember those tough years in 2005 and 2006. But I saw the way through the surge. The American soldier won the peace and won security for the people of Iraq, and every American should be proud. By 2009, when this administration took office, by 2009, Iraq was secure. Before I take one step further, the old book says, if you owe debts, pay debts. If honor, then honor. If respect, then respect. Would the men and women who have worn the uniform of the United States, who are here among us, raise your hand or rise and let us thank you one more time for the way you celebrate. Thank you for your service. But what the American soldier won through incredible sacrifice for them and their families was squandered by Hillary Clinton and this administration when they pulled all American forces out of Iraq at the end of 2012 and created the very vacuum in which the terrorist organization ISIS was literally able to be conjured up out of the desert sands, and it's overrun vast areas that were hard won by the American soldier. It was Hillary Clinton. It was actually Hillary Clinton who initiated the disastrous agreement with the radical mullahs in Iran. $150 billion. And all the American people got was a delay in the nuclear ambitions of the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world. You know, amidst the avalanche of emails that continue to come out, we just found out today that her campaign chairman, John Podesta, was asked in an email if he thought that the Iranian deal was did he agree with the assertion the Iranian deal was, quote, the greatest, this is the quote, the greatest appeasement since Chamberlain gave Czechoslovakia to Hitler. And John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, replied, yep. I mean, men and women, I have to tell you, the truth of the matter is, when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States of America, we're going to rip up the Iran deal. We're going to marshal our allies, and we will not allow the leading state sponsor of terrorism to ever obtain a usable nuclear weapon. And lastly, it was Hillary Clinton and her State Department. And remember this. The responsibility of the State Department for facilities in Libya. It was Hillary Clinton and her State Department who left Americans in harm's way in Benghazi. Now, there's a movie that came out called 13 Hours about that. It's highly accurate, but if you read the title of the movie, you might think that we sent help in 13 hours. The truth is, thanks to the good work that Congress did, the American people now know they never sent help. And literally, when they were confronted in the congressional hearings about it, Democrats on Capitol Hill said, well, we couldn't have gotten there in time. Men and women, when Americans are in harm's way, the American soldier is wheels up. And that's what should have happened when Benghazi was under attack. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It was Hillary Clinton who left Americans in harm's way in Benghazi. And after 4 Americans fell, she told the families of the fallen at Dover Air Force Base, in that sacred moment when their remains came home, that it was the cause of a filmmaker in Florida. When the night of the attack, she told her daughter in an email that it was a terrorist-style Al-Qaeda attack. And when she was challenged on it before a Senate committee, She said words that ring ignominiously into history. She said, quote, "What difference at this point does it make?" Well, let me just say, as the proud father of a United States Marine, anybody who said that, anybody who did that, should be disqualified from ever serving as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States of America. I mean it. We cannot have 4 more years apologizing to our enemies and abandoning our friends. For our nation to be safe, for the world to be safe, America must be strong, and Donald Trump will lead on the world stage with American strength. That's probably why, as of a couple weeks ago, 160 retired admirals and generals, including 17 Medal of Honor winners, endorsed Donald Trump to be the next Commander-in-Chief of the United States. But you know, it's not just about security abroad and protecting us from dangers afar. It's about safety at home. You know, the truth of the matter is that you here in North Carolina know this is a very challenging time for people in law enforcement. It seems like many in the national media and in the other party are very quick to use a broad brush of accusation and demean the intentions and the sincerity of law enforcement when tragedy happens. You know, before we move on, there's a lot of police officers who are with us today. Would you just show these police officers how much you appreciate the job they do for our families and the sacrifices they make to keep us safe? I want to make you a promise. As the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States of America, a President Donald Trump will stand with the men and women who serve on the thin blue line of law enforcement. We will make sure they have the resources and the tools to protect our families and go home safe to theirs, and we will restore law and order to every city and every community in America. You know, that's also probably why the 330,000 law enforcement officers in the Fraternal Order of Police endorsed Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States. So it's about security, but it's also about prosperity. Men and women, we're in the weakest economic recovery since the Great Depression. I promise you, and I just talked to him again tonight, whatever progress you've made here in North Carolina, Pat McCrory knows, just like we know in Indiana. Any progress you've made here has been in spite of what they've been doing in Washington, D.C., not because of it. We have the lowest labor participation rate since the 1970s. Millions of more Americans are living in poverty today than the day that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton stepped up. Hillary Clinton's plan? More of the same. More taxes, more regulation, more Obamacare, more of the war on American energy that is stifling American jobs. Now, they tell us all the time that this economy is the best that we can do. People in North Carolina know better. It's not the best that we can do. It's just the best they can do. And when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, we're going to get this economy moving again by putting time-honored conservative principles into practice. Donald Trump's got a plan. He's got a plan. Instead of Hillary Clinton's plan to raise taxes by $1 trillion, Donald Trump and I are going to cut taxes across the board for working families, small businesses, and family farms. We're going to repeal death taxes, and we're going to lower the business taxes in America so companies in North Carolina can create jobs and opportunities in this country and compete more effectively with companies around the world. And because people in the city and on the farm know that this avalanche of acronyms coming out of Washington, D.C. is killing American jobs. And you all know what I'm talking about. the EPA, the OSHA, the ABCDEFG. I'm telling you what, folks, day one of a Trump-Pence administration, Donald's going to do what we did back in the Hoosier State. We're going to have a moratorium on any new federal regulation, and he's going to repeal every Obama executive order that's crushing jobs and vitality in this economy. Everyone. And Donald Trump and I know that trade means jobs, but when Donald Trump becomes negotiator-in-chief, we're going to renegotiate NAFTA, we're going to get out of the TPP, and we're going to have trade deals where free trade means American jobs first. And we're going to hold our trading partners accountable to the promises that they make. And energy drives a growing economy, so the war on coal ends on day one of the Trump-Pence administration. We're going to develop an all-of-the-above energy strategy and unleash all the power of the natural resources of our land. And lastly, we're going to get rid of that behemoth that came out of this administration. I'll never forget when we were battling against the Affordable Care Act, as it was officially known. Nancy Pelosi actually said on the House floor, we got to pass this bill so we can find out what's in it. You remember that? Well, we found out what's in it. It turns out even Bill Clinton found out what's in it. Did you hear this one? This is great. Former President, I love this, former President Bill Clinton, he referred to the fact that under Obamacare, premiums have gone up and coverage has gone down. And he said, that's, quote, the craziest thing in the world. Well, you know, I mean, even with the Clintons, sometimes truth happens. So I'll tell you what, we're going to roll our sleeves up, and we're going to repeal Obamacare, lock, stock, and barrel. And we're going to start over with the kind of health care reform that lowers the cost of health insurance instead of growing the size of government. We're going to do it not the Canadian way, not the socialized medicine way. We're going to do it the American way by unleashing the free market economy to meet our insurance and health care needs. And next, I want to tell you, you got to tell your neighbors and friends this one. It's about security at home and abroad. It's about prosperity. But it's also about a decision that we'll make in a little less than 4 weeks that it's going to have generational consequences. I mean, the truth is, you look at this administration, you here in North Carolina know whereof I speak, it seems like there's no aspect of their lives, of our lives, too small for them to want to supervise out of Washington. There's no provision of the Constitution too large for them willing to ignore. The next president is going to be elected for a 4-year term, but you got to remember, the next president will likely set the course and direction of the Supreme Court of the United States for the next 40 years, and we better think long and hard about that. Better think long and hard about that. And the truth of the matter is, you elect Hillary Clinton. You heard her little checklist in that debate the other night. She's just getting started. Get used to more unelected judges using unconstitutional, unaccountable power to make unconstitutional actions, okay? Legislating from the bench. But you elect Donald Trump as the next president of the United States, we're going to appoint women and men to our highest court and all of our federal courts who will uphold the Constitution of the United States, who will strictly construe the Constitution of our nation, who will protect the God-given liberties that are enshrined there and stand on that solid foundation. So let me just say, it's about security, it's about prosperity, but we have to decide in North Carolina, you just got to tell your neighbors and friends, for the sake of the rule of law, for the sake of our Constitution and limited government, for the sake of the sanctity of life, for the sake of our Second Amendment to the Constitution, we have to decide that we will not rest, we will not relent until we ensure that the next president making appointments to the Supreme Court of the United States is President Donald Trump. So this campaign's about big issues. It's about big issues, but it's also about maybe about one of the most important issues of all. The principle that no one is above the law. You know, it really is kind of hard to explain this. You almost have to just stop and think about it for a second. So while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, the third-ranking constitutional officer in charge of the foreign policy of this country, she and her husband had a private family foundation that accepted tens of millions of dollars in contributions from foreign governments and foreign millionaires. And in between those two things, the New York Times informed us that she had a private server so she could have communications that would be outside the scope, presumably, of public scrutiny. And because of information that's come out, we found out that there was access given. More than half of the private meetings that she held with individuals when she was Secretary of State were contributors to the Clinton Foundation. And when all this came to light, of course, you know that when the Congress made inquiries into getting a hold of those emails, she actually used a high technology and hammers to put the information out of reach. Hammers, smashing Blackberries. But nonetheless, the emails keep coming out. We see them all more every day. You'll see more tonight. One of the emails that just came out had Hillary Clinton saying that she told a paid speech audience at some big event that to be, quote, successful politically, you have to, quote, have both a public and private position on public issues. When she was asked about that during the debate, do you remember that question she got? She gave us some lecture on Abraham Lincoln or something. I'd sure prefer if dishonest Hillary did not use the name of Honest Abe in vain, okay? Another email shows she gave a speech. She got a paid speech at a Brazilian bank. Did you hear about this one? A Brazilian bank paid her a lot of money to give a speech, and she told them, quote, her dream is a hemisphere common market, open trade, and open borders. Probably most troubling of all, we found out that Hillary Clinton, actually her campaign, was in direct communication with the Department of Justice during the investigation into her servant. Let me just make you a promise. If you're sick and tired of this avalanche of controversies and scandals, there's a cure. When we make Donald Trump the next president of the United States of America, we will once again uphold the principle that no one is above the law. We will appoint a special prosecutor who will get to the bottom of the Clinton Foundation and hold them accountable for their years and their deeds. As I close, let me challenge you if I can. I really appreciate you coming out tonight. I know that I'm not exactly the main event, I really am. I'm very humble. I'm humbled to be here. My family and I, we couldn't be more humbled to be here. We really couldn't. To be a part of this movement, and it is a movement. It's a movement that's going to turn this country around. Is deeply humbling to us. But I hope you came here tonight. I hope you came here tonight more than to hear a speech, but to be equipped, because you got to go tell somebody. North Carolina, I got to tell you, you might not be the only state that holds the keys to this election and the direction of America, but you sure are on a short list of states. And so you got to go tell somebody. You got to go tell somebody what you heard. But I want you to tell them one more thing, if you would. Tell them about security and prosperity and the highest court in the land and the principle of the law and upholding the law for all. But the other thing I want you to tell them is that in Donald Trump and Mike Pence, you have two people
that truly do believe in these divided times that there will always be more that unites us in the United States of America than will ever divide the good and great people of this land. And it has a lot to do with faith. I mean, I want to tell them about the choice. Find a neighbor or friend at worship, at work, stop them behind a backyard fence. Send out an email, for crying out loud. Jump on the phone, tell somebody. Facebook, Instagram. Do whatever you can do. I mean, the truth of the matter is, the media's out there doing half of Hillary Clinton's work for her every day of the week. But this movement is still growing every day because the American people are talking to each other. And they know we can make America great again. But you got to go tell somebody. You got to go tell somebody. And when you do, tell them that in Donald Trump and in Mike Pence, it's not just the issues that divide us, but it is what unites us. And as I said, I think it has a lot to do with faith. Faith in God and faith in the American dream. Karen and I first got to know the Trumps this summer. They invited our family to come spend time with their family. We actually found out that we shared a lot in our backgrounds and experience. His grandfather immigrated to this country through Ellis Island. My grandfather immigrated to this country when he was about our son's age. His dad built a business with his own hands, a good family and a good name. My dad worked down to a small town in southern Indiana and built a little gas station business that we all grew up working in together. We were both raised to believe that to whom much is given, much will be required. And so for Donald Trump, that meant the kid from Queens was going to Manhattan Island, right? And he was going to build the big buildings to the sky. For me, it was a calling into public service and to give back to the country that had given so much to my family. I mean, I always tell people that other than a whole lot of zeros, Donald Trump and I really do have a lot in common. And that's this. It's a belief in the American dream. It's a belief in the American dream and a belief that it's not a cliche. It's not a bumper sticker. I mean, that Irishman's brogue still rings in my ears. I was actually named after him. Richard Michael Cawley had the courage to come to this nation. And Michael Richard Pence is standing before all of you as a candidate for Vice President of the United States. This is an amazing country. It's an amazing country. The American dream is simply this, that anybody can be anybody. If you work hard, you study hard, you play by the rules, and you never give up on your dreams. And so my first promise to all of you, tell your neighbors and friends, Donald Trump and Mike Pence are going to work every day to revive the American dream for every American, regardless of race or creed or color or gender or area code or income. We're going to fight to bring the American dream back to life for this generation and the next. And lastly, it's not just faith in the American dream, but it's the other kind of faith. In these challenging times, a time when it seems like there's so much that divides us, I encourage you, if you do like the Pence family does, on a regular basis, if you bow the head and bend the knee, I encourage you to do that now. And I'm running for Vice President of the United States because I think this country's in a lot of trouble. I think if we stay on our present course and heading down the hill to a weaker America at home and abroad, I don't know what's ahead. But I have faith. I have faith that we're going to come together. And I have faith that He who set this miracle of democracy on these wilderness shores has yet great purpose in this last best hope of earth. So I encourage you to pray. Not for politics and outcomes, but just pray for America. Because I believe what's true today is what has always been true. That if His people who are called by His name will humble themselves and pray, He'll hear from heaven and He'll heal this land. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So men and women in North Carolina, I want you to leave here today. I want you to go tell somebody. Do not rest. Do not relent. Just tell them we have a choice to make. And the great news is that choice is not in the hands of the pundits, the talk show hosts, the editorial writers, internet website operators. I mean, it's in the hands of the American people. And that's why I have such confidence that if all of us work like it all depended on us, and do everything in our power to tell our neighbors and friends that we can change the direction of this nation. And so North Carolina, I'm asking you, do not rest. Do not relent any day between now and November 8th until we make Donald Trump the 45th President of the United States of America. And when you do that, we will make America great again. Let's go.